Might be in a little bit. Pavel, did you have any time to have a look at the vision issue?
Yep, I have checked your bullets for each tool.
Did you add anything on your own?
Nope, I didn't write anything because I agree with your bullets. Looks nice.
That's a good start. This makes it a lot easier. So any suggestions how we gonna keep going or what we're gonna do next?
I mean, we can just, we can just quickly go through the remaining parts, at least from my point and yours, Jonas, because Pavel said he agrees already, and then maybe aggregate a list and already try to prioritize.
I think that sounds good. Maybe we should, after we discussed it, the question is how many of those tools do we want to keep in mind here in the beginning and focus on? Or whether we could just focus on, for example, JSON schema, parser first, and then in a few months, maybe we take then we have all the bullet points still, but we don't focus on it specifically yet. Like it's a little bit more blurred, but we still have an idea about it. I don't know how that sounds.
I think that we can divide it between us. I'm totally in with JSON schemas, and I already have planned related works with it through TCK repository, and I think that I will focus on it, on JSON schemas and on parser.
All right. Let's just start with what we wrote down after last meeting, Lawrence. And Pavel, just chime in if you have any other points that you want to add. Do you want to go first, Lawrence? Or
yeah, sure. Okay. I think we left off at code first tools, right? So we only got through schema and parser.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, then code first. So yeah, I think for me the most important thing is that we have a good integration with application frameworks, because most people just use frameworks, and also it would also boost adoption if there's a good integration. Message brokers is like the second thing, I think. Unfortunately, at least in the Java space, and probably also for other frameworks and languages, the implementation depends mostly on the message broker. So every message broker has their own library. So if you want to generate some documentation from code, there also needs to be some integration with those several brokers. And the last thing is probably flexibility. Yeah, I think it's also a little bit related to the brokers. So every broker works differently. So it makes sense to build those code first tools in a way that everyone actually can use them for their specific use case that might be completely different from someone else's use case. So this is code first tools. Then schema registry. For me, I never used this for async API, but I imagined it's similar to something like something similar to package registry. So for me, it's just important that this registry would support some public API for storing documents and retrieving them, and a version history would also be nice. So I'm just thinking of something similar to Maven or NPM, something like this. Then integration into existing frameworks. I don't have any points there because this is just part of Code First tools and code generators for me. So can just go through to the last point. Generating code, yeah, as I just said, it's also important, I think, that generators support the application frameworks. So actually also follow the best practices of those frameworks. So when we generate some code, it should actually be, it should be looking nice and be, it should be the correct way for the language and framework. I think it's also nice to have the two options, so generating a whole project, which is probably not so important, but also like supporting adding components, for example, adding a new channel to an existing project. And then the last point, it should be also customizable easily. So I think it's not really realistic that one person or one in our case, working group is supporting like every framework or every use case there exists. So it should be easy for everyone to just create their own templates for their own setup. That's all.
I agree with all of it. Pavel, anything?
I agree too. Yep, nothing to add.
All right. Code first tools. So my vision for code first tools is basically like engineers should easily be able to use their code to document their applications and how it interacts with the world. So it means an annotation style. So you get an async API document out in the other end, so you can use it for more if you wish. So, for example, documentation or discovery or all of these other things. So you can actually take leverage of what else async API offers. And it, of course, has to be in no matter what language it is. So if you use Java, if you use Kotlin, if you use C#, doesn't matter. You should be able to do the same thing, or at least thereof. Now, I do have one point that is I haven't used that much code first before. So some of these points might not make much sense. So if you see something that doesn't make sense, just correct me. But yeah, features include like you can annotate anything that you can also write in the async API document. So if there is a field within async API, you should be able to document it in the code as well. It must be able to output an async API document from code, so you can use it for more. And of course, you can do it in any language. And the last one is that you can also output the async API document from code, but on the other perspective of someone interacting with that application. So like it's almost like a flip perspective. And the reason why I added that feature is, what if you wanted to generate a client just for interacting with that specific one, that specific application, however that interacts with an event-driven system or REST or whatever. It's basically just the opposite operation. And that's basically what I had for code first. Any question for that?
Yeah, about the last point, is it not always the opposite way? Because this is like the first thing people ask me, why annotate something with publish, even though this application subscribes to a channel? Or what do you mean with the other way around?
So it has always been that you document your, like the async API document describes an application, your application. The problem in version 2 is that it had flip meaning of the operation keywords. meaning that when you wrote subscribe, it doesn't mean that your application is subscribing to this topic or whatever. It means the opposite, that someone else can subscribe to it because my application is publishing to it. In V3, however, we changed those entire meanings. So now it's an action, it's what the application is doing. So when you write send as the operation action, it means that your application that you're describing here is actually sending over this channel with these messages.
Okay.
So you're not really, in theory, you're not, it depends on how you want to interpret it, but you're not describing how others interact with your application. You are describing exactly how your application is interacting with the world. But that also means that you can generate an async API document that is the client. That is, how does another application, how does that interact with the world to just interact with this application? So that's what I mean by that opposite point of view.
Got it. I think it will be like even more confusing then if you have like the option to flip it around again. But okay, cool. Good to know also that version 3 fixed this. I have to actually support this soon. So
we have it a few places in code generation tools where they provide a view parameter or something else that they came up with, which just flips the meaning of these operation keywords in the similar manner that I kind of want the code first tool to do, in case that you just want to generate something or do something that describes how you interact with a single application.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Any questions, Paul?
Nope, it's totally clear for me.
All right, moving on, schema registry. So yeah, I see it the exact same way that you do, Lawrence. It's basically just a place to store like either full async API documents or partial documents, messages, channels, whatever, that can then be referenced across multiple async API documents. I think that's the only difference. And of course, it's either privately or publicly. So it could be behind closed doors that need quite an extensive use of certificates or credentials. It's at least something to be aware of. And the features include that those type of schema registries should be easily usable by all parsers. So that means that if you have an async API document, or if you want to pass from a URL in the parser, you should be able to, like these schema registries and whatever security measurement they have, etc. All of these things should be working across all our tools, basically. And it all starts with the parsers understanding it, of course. Yeah, then I started to go into like, what as I as a developer, what would I like from a schema registry in the terms of if I want to build my own integration, etc. That means exposing an API instead of like point and click, like platform type interactions, while still having that platform possibility. And same as you, Lawrence, multiple versions of schemas in intuitive ways. How to do that. Any questions for those?
Totally clear for me, again.
Same here.
All right. Integrations into existing frameworks. So if a developer is using a framework in whatever language and whatever framework, basically, there's no chance that they're going to switch over their application or their implementation to something else. It's very unlikely if it's an already existing application. So, but we can still make it easier to work with async API by, of course, supporting whatever framework so their development workflow is improved by a lot. It can either be through that you have code generation or documentation is being generated, or you name it. So you can still reap all the benefits of Async API. So that means that you can enable like beyond documentation, code generation, whatever else. And then that basically just means that it's easier to handle message payload, for example, within the framework. So, and again, I haven't used that many frameworks before and in an application, so feel free to correct me here, because these are basically code generation type features. Yeah, generation of headers, wrapper functions for topic channel paths based on the async API document. So you get like just a single function to call instead of having to build everything on your own. I'm going to include the code generation part because it's kind of the same. Which is basically you should be able to save time. So you don't have to duplicate work, that you can catch specific problems earlier, bugs, basically improve your development workflow. And the way I see code generation is that you kind of have any of you ever tried the GraphQL before and their code generation tool?
You mean where you can generate, for example, TypeScript types from your schema?
Yeah.
Yeah, we use this also.
Yeah, so I kind of want the same feeling that you get from the GraphQL. So it's easily, like, you can integrate those code generation parts, like just message payloads, types for your message payloads, into your already existing libraries. So you don't have to like generate an entirely fully built library. It can also be integrated into your already existing code. So that means that you can generate message payloads, you can choose to generate headers, you can generate topic message matrix, like which topic and which message are together. It can be helper functions for interacting with defined channels, like basically what we talked about up here. But it can also be fully libraries, like fully external library, basically like a client that you can install and then make the interaction easier, right? So it can be either one of those, in my opinion. But yeah, it's hard because you have a lot of protocols and you have a lot of schemas as well, all of which complicate stuff. Any questions or anything to add?
Nope. You can check out my issue at Studio Repo with similar proposals, and that's why I decided to bring today proposal from our specification repo, because it will be hard to create write generators, parsers, and so on without additional changes in our specification. I mean, right now I'm working on editor and updating JAsync API, Java Beginnings for external customers, and I already have issues with new versions of OpenAPI and Avra, and looks like if we can't add new versions and make changes in our specification, it will be hard for us in the future.
But is there, so do you mind if we take it in the end, Pavel, that issue and discuss it there?
Okay.
All right, so now that we basically have an idea, or somewhat of an idea, I think we should, what did we say the next step was? It was gathering all of those things that we each have, form a list, like our vision, our total vision for each tool. And then we focus on basically the most important tools first. So I'd recommend like the JSON schema, the parser, and getting those two started. And then we can always see where to go from there and what that includes. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I think it makes sense, but I can already say that I don't have a lot of knowledge about those two tools. So I'm happy to discuss it, but probably I can't really contribute anything that helps you.
We can always figure it out because there's stuff on this that I haven't any experience with either. But let's figure out how, because we also, like, this is just superficial in a sense, right? It's a superficial vision of each of the tools. And the next type of questions is like, what do we do on each of these tools? What do we have already? What is missing? And then prioritize those type of tasks, or like what to do to figure out like a road going forward, right? That's at least how I see it.
Okay, let's try.
So since we're not full numbers today, do we want to do it like before forming a single list, we let people write down their own list, finish those, and then we merge every single one of those points that we have into a single list. I can do it before the next meeting. And then we prioritize that list of features next time and figure out that road, like what to do next, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to jump straight to your issue now, Pavel, and discuss that? Or do you folks have anything else you want to add to the agenda or talk about first?
Well, looks like it's, at least for now, it's totally transparent, our roadmap. And yep, I want to return back to issue with our specification, because for me it's a stop point. I don't know how to tell correctly. It blocks me right now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'm working on tools for our specification, also as on Studio, maybe for 1 year, and for sure, main pain in S, it's our specification, that it's hard to extend it and cooperate with folks to add new formats and new constructions.
Can you clarify what you mean by it's hard or it's blocking?
Okay, I can tell you, I can name you examples. First example, it's integration part with frameworks like Spring or Quarkus, and right now users can use Avro schemas different from 1.9.0, for example 1.11.1, and unfortunately those generated schema will be incorrect for our studio and for our validators, and that's why I bring this issue today. Looks like we need to decide what to do with new versions of schemas, which we introduced in release 2.6.0 and 3.0.0. For example, Avro and OpenAPI, because everyone around me is using latest versions for these schemas to describe their payloads, for example, or to apply to Kafka, and it's totally strange for me that we can't validate those schemas in our tools. That's first problem. Second problem also will be related, for example, with schema registry or with other tools for validating of async API parts, because I still not be able to not agree, not approve.
But are they blocking your progress or no? Because as I saw it, you already have like 3 of the code owners discussing in your issue.
Yeah, but my main point is to tell that we as essential blocks, building blocks members, maybe must spend more times in specification, right, and boost up proposals like new versions of schemas and mechanism to validate external components like messages, schemas, and so on. Because you can't do it without agreement how to split your schema correctly. Looks like it's time to propose, for now, at least external field, which will help us to identify component, for example, as server or as message. My pain is more related with specification and with tools.
I mean, there's always going to be places or scenarios where whatever we do here is going to have something lacking within the specification where we have to collaborate with them in order to improve those things. When it comes to the schema formats, because you can use any string, it should be easily possible to adapt both the schema files and propose those, have those changes ready alongside the discussion in the spec repo. So like you can work in parallel almost while you're discussing it with them, because like the solutions in the JSON schema files, for example, or in the parsers is somewhat the same, right? And it's going to take time in the spec repo. That's just the nature of it, right?
Yep, I understood, but looks like all of us are using our specification day to day, and looks like we can boost up adoption of new proposals, because without them it will be strange to build new tools which will generate specification not compatible compatible with our specification. I mean that that's why I created this issue and trying to put light on this problem, that we can't create new tools without fast adoption of new proposals, of new schema components and specification components and so on.
So I agree. So I think we have to separate it a little bit though. Like, for example, I think you can easily team up with some of the spec owners in order to move issues a little bit faster, especially if it's stuck or something needs to be discussed more heavily. Like, there's nothing wrong in proposing, like, can we get on a call to figure this out, or can we something else to speed it up, because this is blocking me for doing X, Y, Z, right? The problem is, regardless, it's going to take a little while because it is open source and it is the specification itself. So you can, like, we can do a lot of things in order to speed it up, but we can't speed it up beyond a certain threshold, unfortunately. So there is some kind of planning involved as well, where we have to like kind of predict whether or not we're going to get into trouble with X, Y, Z in the specification, so we can start it as soon as possible, right? I don't know if that made sense for your specific case, Pavel. Kinda. I know it doesn't solve your problem. That's the thing. Like, there's no easy fix for it.
Yeah.
But it is something like to take up with the spec code owners, because I'm not a code owner, and we don't have anyone in this call that is or within the working group that is a code owner in the spec either. But yeah, like, it's all about communication. So like, reach out on Slack, like ping folks if it's if your issue gets stuck. That's my only recommendation, I think, for this specific case.
Yep, I agree with you, and I just want to synchronize with you and propose to review proposals which will be posted in our working group Slack group to get help and attention from my side to review and challenge proposals, and maybe to raise them to our backlog and put light on potential issues or problems in the future.
I think I can offer one bit on the issue itself. I haven't looked fully into it because of just letting the spec owners talk or discuss a little bit. But one of the problems is like, you're fixing it right now by adding certain versions of Avro, of I can't remember whether it was OpenAPI schema as well. But like, if we have to adapt the spec every time a new Avro version comes up, because they have minor and they have patches, right? And right now the schema format string, like that key, includes the entire version. What if it's just contained the major version and you don't care about the fix and features? Would that help like long term? Because then you don't have to change the spec itself, then you just need to change the JSON schema files every time a new Avro version comes in, becomes available, right? So that's at least for the long term of that specific issue. I don't know if that made sense.
Yep.
It probably has some cavities though. Probably have some downsides by doing it, but at least from a spec perspective, it might make sense. Yeah. Anything else you want to about this issue that we want to discuss?
Nothing to add for now.
All right, so actions for next meeting was so all of us finished our lists. Then I make a super list of things. And then next meeting, we take a priority of those. And then we deep dive into JSON schema, what's needed, what's missing. So we kind of get like a task list to do. Same with parsers, figure out like, how can we do that? How can we achieve it? And what's missing? Potential solutions, like start really digging into how we can improve tooling, right? Does that make sense? And then I write a recap in the current meeting notes. So those that didn't attend also has it.
Do we also want to maybe already note down a little bit who is interested in which tool? Because I think this is also important to consider this. Because, for example, the schema topic, I'm happy to also participate in the discussions, but I probably won't invest too much time additionally to that. And maybe if you already like have an overview, if you actually have people who would be interested in working on those tools, would also be helpful to maybe think about the roadmap. If it's actually feasible to say we want to do something for this tool, even though maybe no one actually wants to do it. So I think no one also wants to be forced to spend their free time working on this.
For sure. I actually think that might be a very good idea to also do. So we have a desire type list in the terms of like, where are we like most interested in those specific tools? So we also know like how to, which also means that we might be able to like parallel some of the efforts maybe. So if someone really wants to work on whatever, one of them that are lower on the list, they can just start ahead because they don't care about the initials ones. But it kind of depends a little bit as well whether those tools require or are dependent on those on top. Because if you're, for example, implementing Kotlin and you're doing for example, if you're doing parser, for example, and no one has implemented something in this JSON schema repo that enables you to fetch those schemas in Kotlin, then you're kind of stuck in the terms of like, are you gonna wait for someone else to do it, or? And it's same with some of the other tools, right?
Yeah, it could also help like finding problems and then collaborating. Because right now
Yes.
I don't know about, or I don't even understand some of the problems Paul already like discussed. For me, they are really abstract. He knows about them because he like works on I think it was code editors like IDE stuff, and then you notice some problems. So it might also be interesting to also work on some of the tools that are maybe lower in the dependency graph, because then you can actually also iterate. Like you have some iterations where you try to implement something, then you find problems, you can discuss them with the group. Maybe this also makes sense.
Yeah, you're right. I also think it's a good idea to maybe make assumptions. So for example, that you assume that the JSON schema files are correct from your point of view, right? So but yeah, we can do that, like split up as much as we want as we go along, for sure. There are no requirements in terms of that you have to do something. That's the most important part. Any final remarks you want to bring up?
Nope.
No? Want to end early?
Yes.
Yes.
Please.
All right, I'm gonna do those things. I'm gonna ping you all on the Slack channel once I posted all those things, and yeah, and then I'll see you in a week.
Okay. Let's do that.
All right, see ya, guys. Thank
See
you.
you.